Thanks, Philip Gibbons, and thank you for joining us today. Hope you're having a great weekend. 4 years ago this month, of course, the terrible 2020 EF tornado that hit Putnam County took 19 lives, destroyed hundreds of homes and families. You know, in the past 4 years, I've heard and seen and witnessed a lot of the stories of the survival and perseverance and recovery and rebuilding, but most of all of the faith of a lot of the folks that was involved in the tornado. I know in my job as county mayor back then, it was a terrible time for all of us, but we all had that hope and faith that God was going to take care of us, and He did. And that's what the show is about today. It's about that faith and that hope. And one of those stories of that perseverance and recovery has been made into a book. My guest this morning is the author of that book, After the Storm. It's a true story of tragedy, survival, and hope. It's written by Dr. Lauren Farmer, and she's my guest this morning. Good morning, Lauren.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm great.
Good.
It's good to see you on a good positive note.
Yes.
Those days of the tornado, of course, were bad for all of us, but we survived. But you wrote a book, but before we get into the book, I wanted to kind of give folks a little background about you and your husband and what brought you to Cookeville.
Yeah, so I'm actually from Florida. I'm not even from Tennessee. And my husband got into nursing school at Tennessee Tech. So we got married, we moved here, he started nursing school. And at first when I got here, I was not a huge fan. It was very small townish.
Yeah, different,
and,
right?
Yeah, very different from what I'm used to. And it wasn't the beach and the waves. But over the 2 years, I grew to absolutely love it. And we loved it so much that we decided to build a house. So
down on Hensley Drive, right?
Yes.
Of course, which come to find out was the eye of the storm when the tornado come in. So you and your husband made a life here. He's a nurse.
Yes.
Works at Cookeville Regional Hospital. You have a doctorate in physical therapy.
Yes.
Right? And so you're a pediatric physical therapist.
Yes, I'm the supervising physical therapist at Stepping Stones Therapy, and I've been there for, almost 3 years now, and it's been amazing. I have worked in almost every segment of physical therapy, but pediatrics has been the most challenging and the most rewarding.
I would say so, yeah. Having to work with kids, and they don't really understand what's happening to them. And but
you can't just tell them to do 5 push-ups,
yeah,
you know?
Yeah, but very rewarding. So your life, you got a normal life, you and your husband, you're both got good jobs, everything's going great, and let's start on that day on March the 3rd and just kind of walk us through in your own words of what happened and how your lives changed.
Yeah, so that evening started out with a great dinner with a good couple of ours, friends of ours, Brian and Megan. We were going out for his birthday, and we went out to Spanky's like any other time, had a great date night, and came home, went to bed like every other night. And then in the middle of the night, my husband actually, he was woken up by some green lightning, which was odd.
Yeah.
And we weren't sure what was going on, but he came back to bed. And then later on in the that night, we were woken up by our phones, and some people's phones woke them up, some didn't.
Yeah, and so we had an issue with the cell towers that the tornado hit in Nashville and Wilson County first, and we didn't know that it damaged the cell network, and so
that explains it. Then I didn't know that.
Yeah, that a lot of folks didn't even get the warning from the cell phones,
Wow.
But you did, right?
We did. So we had less than a minute from waking up to it hitting. And normally, when you look at your phone, you think, oh, let me pull up the TV or check and see what's happening or what county. And if we had done any of those things, we likely would not be here today. So we jumped into action. Got dressed, we have 2 German Shepherds, so we grabbed the dogs and their leashes, and we headed to our safe room, if you can call it that. It was our under the stairs half bathroom.
Yeah.
And we actually, when we built the house, we had reinforced it with 3/4 inch plywood, thinking that would be enough.
Yeah.
Right. So it wasn't, obviously. Every house on our side of the road was completely decimated,
destroyed,
down to, I think our house was the only one that had more than the subfloor left over. And we were buried and drug, 30 or 40 feet to our neighbor's yard. And then after it being so loud and so deafening, it was dead silent for 3 seconds. And then you could hear the screams of our neighbors. And that was so hard. After my husband made sure I was okay, he was able to climb right out and get to helping our neighbors immediately. I had one dog left. One had been ripped out of my arms in the storm. And I actually said goodbye to that dog and tied her to the house with the leash in my hand and got out to help my husband. Happy story, though.
Yeah.
Both dogs survived.
They both survived,
They
right?
did. They did.
So you get the alert, and I mean, you got seconds, right? I mean, to before this thing hits. What's going through your mind though when all that starts happening? I mean, are you physically thinking this is the end, or?
No, thinking back, there was never a moment where I truly felt in danger or like I needed to hurry, but we worked rapidly, and we were systematic in the way that, okay, you go get our clothes, I'm going to go get the dog's leashes. We met at the safe room, and I actually went back into our bedroom for socks. I wanted my wool alpaca socks.
You wanted your socks.
I did. And my husband was yelling at me. I remember hearing, "You don't have time." And all I could think to myself was, I don't have time for what?
Yeah.
And you could just hear things and the pressure. You almost feel weightless before everything just kind of exploded. It's the best way to describe it.
Your home totally destroyed, right?
Completely, yes.
And most of the homes on Hensley, especially on the one side of the street. So continue from that point.
Yeah, so we crawled out of the house and just got to work. And I've talked to friends since the storm, and the way that Kory and I worked was as one. It was truly just not a whole lot of communication, but just going back and forth. And we really, really knew our neighbors very well. We were involved, most of us, in the same church. We were a part of a small group, and we had hung out a lot together. So we knew who lived on every house on the street. We knew who was on vacation. We knew them by their voices. So we knew who to look for. We knew that our next door neighbor, Chet, was out in California. And just that was so helpful. And especially when the emergency services personnel arrived, we were able to tell them details of who to look for.
That took a while, though, didn't it, Lauren? Because the streets were totally blocked with the power lines down and all the debris. So you had some time there that y'all were on your own. Right?
I don't know if it was 30, 45 minutes, but I do remember when we saw the first person, and I haven't talked about this a whole lot, but his name was either Andrew Scott or Scott Andrew. I knew he had two first names.
Andrew Scott.
Okay. Yep, that's him. And I remember seeing him as we are climbing on top of a pile of rubble looking for a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
And once I saw him, I went into shock because my body finally could just relax knowing that people had got to us.
Help had arrived.
Help had arrived, exactly.
We're talking with Dr. A. She experienced that firsthand. Her name is Dr. Lauren Farmer. Her and her husband, Kory, lived on Hensley Drive right in the eye of the storm, lost their home and all their belongings. And she's wrote a book about that. It's called After the Storm, and we're talking with her today. Lauren, we kind of left off in the last segment where the storm had hit. First responders had finally arrived, were able to get to you. We were talking at break about how the community came together, but your little group there, the little community that you live in, tell us about how that worked.
Yeah, so on our street, Hensley, and some of the neighboring streets around us, we had a small group from our church, and we had made it a big intention of ours to really get to know each other, to learn names, occupations, and to befriend the people around us. You know, God tells us to love your neighbor,
Amen.
And we were really trying to live that out.
Yeah.
Where do you start? Your neighborhood.
Neighbor.
So we had this amazing community. It was just a dream. I was so excited to raise kids on the cul-de-sac and have this big group, small big group, to get together and just enjoy each other's company. I really think that the strength of our belief and the strength of our community was a target for us because our street was the EF-4. Where it hit at its strongest point. And it completely decimated the houses on that street. I mean, there was barely anything left standing after that. And it kind of has dispersed us all around the city. And, I think something that was intended to be a negative has really turned into a positive because now we've taken that and we create that in all these different neighborhoods together. Kory and I actually did end up rebuilding. So we're on that same plot.
You're on the same. So was that a tough decision?
It was. Oh, if you had asked me initially, I said, absolutely not, never, we're not going back. But it was my husband who felt called to go back and to rebuild. And I am so grateful that we did. You know, there's Hope Park there now.
Yes.
And initially, I was actually very against Hope Park. And I was pretty vocal about it because I wanted everything to go back to the way it was.
Right.
But that's just not possible.
No.
So now that I have 2 young boys of my own, I'm so grateful for the park. I love what it represents, the hope that it represents, and also just using that area to bring families back in and to make it a positive environment.
Hope for the future.
Yes.
Not to remember the tornado. We didn't want to do anything that brought back those memories, but hope for that future, right?
And I love that. And it's been such a big part of our lives today. We're there almost every day. But deciding to go back, we lost our house, we lost our cars, almost all of our possessions. And neither one of us are from Cookeville. So it was a really big decision for us to stay because we thought about going to Chattanooga, where my husband's from, or back to Panama City, where I'm from.
Right.
And the way that this community showed up, I knew that there was nothing else like this. And this is exactly where we were supposed to be for this point of our lives.
We were talking, I know your little community showed up and all your neighbors came together and you kind of had your own little first aid station there. With those folks and everybody taking care of each other. I'll never forget when we had all these people wanting to volunteer, and so we decided, and it was a bad mistake that we found out afterwards, we decided the next day that we would open up and let volunteers come into the area to try to help you guys. And we thought, hey, we'll get 200 or 300 people, you know. Well, we had everybody meet down on South Jefferson at the old Hobby Lobby parking lot. We shut down every street in Cookeville. There was thousands of people, and we got too many people into the zone and trying to help y'all. And of course, like I said, that we realized that and pulled them out the next day. But I agree with you. I've never seen anything happen like the way the community turned out. I know it was bad, but I mean, they were donating money, they were donating food, they were donating, volunteering their own time to come in and help, and so that was a big part of your decision to rebuild. I want to hear the wedding dress story. So you lost basically everything. Your home's destroyed, but there was something about your wedding dress?
Yes. So my dress a picture had surfaced of my dress on Facebook, and I had people sending me pictures of things all the time. Hey, is this yours? Is this yours? Can I get it for you? And somebody sent me a picture of the dress, and I was like, yes, that's my wedding dress. And so one of my friends, Liz, she put herself on a mission to find this dress. She was calling. She had put out a reward for the dress. And then I remember she finally found it. And she called me, and we were at the Red Silo that day, and she brought it over, and my husband's wedding coat had been found as well.
Oh, wow.
So there's actually a picture of us with the dirty dress and coat, like holding it up, and we have both of those items now. And it's not that I would ever wear it again, but it's just a special memory.
What's the memory? Yeah.
And something that I get to pick, and I get to choose if I want to keep it or not. Because when you lose everything, even though we all have boxes of memories put up in the attic, things that we never look at, it's our decision to keep them.
Right.
And when that decision is taken from you, that's the hard part. Something that meant a lot to me as well is my college side ladies. There's a group of ladies that were so close to me. They went to my lot, picked up every piece of clothing, shook out the glass and insulation, took it to their own washers and dryers, and they washed everything so that I could decide what to keep.
What a blessing.
It was amazing. And, most of the things weren't salvageable.
Yeah.
But there was so much that we actually have shirts and dresses now. We're like, oh, there's a hole. I think that was a survivor.
So, I mean, you basically had to start from scratch, right?
Yes.
That's I heard stories of pictures and stuff hundreds of miles away. Did you have any of those experiences?
Yeah, so about 52 miles out towards Knoxville. I don't remember the city that was in, but we got a phone call one day, and somebody had found one of our tax documents from a filing cabinet that was up on the second floor.
Wow.
And it had gone 50 plus miles. And I was like, no, please shred that. I don't want that back.
But it carried things hundreds of miles away. Those things are so terrible. We're talking with Dr. Lauren Farmer this morning. She wrote a book. Her and her husband, Kory, they lived through the EF-4 tornado, lost everything, home totally destroyed. Thankfully, both of them survived. And she wrote a book called After the Storm. Lauren, what made you a few years later, before this book thing come about. Tell us about why you decided that you wanted to write a book.
I never thought that I would be a writer. The way that it happened is I was at a personal development conference with one of my friends who's out of town. And while I was there, I met this amazing woman, and she owns a publishing company. And she did a presentation about writing a book and telling your story. And we spoke afterwards, and she just got me fired up. And I realized that I did have a story to share. It was more of a answering to God's calling to be obedient.
Yeah.
Telling your story and being vulnerable and telling all the parts. It's really difficult, and you have to allow yourself to be put out there. It's not an easy thing to do. So doing that, I just felt like I was trying to help other people. So my story is really about hope, and we all go through storms, whether it be like an actual storm with a tornado
Right.
or going through different hard pieces of our lives.
Right.
We all have a way of we have to get through that. And so what I wanted to do was help people see hope and see the little miracles and the way that God supports us through that. So I kind of have it in 3 different pieces: a little bit of my life before the tornado and the exact aftermath, and then afterwards. So for example, something that is kind of personal to my husband and I is we were trying to start a family. And for years we didn't have answers. We weren't successful. And looking back now, if we'd had kids, they would have been on the 2nd floor. And we would not have time to get to them because our bedroom was on the 1st floor. So seeing the way that God's timing works and the way that he set us up to have a beautiful family now, I never would have known in the moment, but I trusted him and trusted his timing. And so now we have this amazing blessing. Mm-hmm.
Talk about your family now. So just you and your husband, you lost your home, you lost everything, you rebuilt on the same lot.
Yes.
And now you've got an amazing 2 kids, right?
Yes, I have a 2-year-old. Actually, we ended up getting pregnant right when we moved back into our new house. It was the craziest timing.
Just meant to be.
It was meant to be. And I have a 4-month-old. And I actually wrote the book while I was pregnant with him and working full time.
Wow.
So it was a busy point of our lives, but I wouldn't change anything about it. And I've had so many people reach out to me just telling me how sharing my story has helped them to heal and helped them to get through some really hard times. Something else is I was not raised in the church. I went to church here and there with my family, but we were not heavily involved. And so being vulnerable and sharing my experiences with that has helped some other people grow in their faith and really come back to the little miracles in their life.
My opinion, you can agree or disagree, is that it's hard to explain or tell someone about something if you haven't experienced it.
Mm-hmm.
The best person to give their testimony or to tell you how to do something is somebody that's went through that before.
Mm-hmm.
God put you through this for whatever reason, but to help these other people, because now with this book, hundreds and thousands of people can read this, and you never know whose life you're going to touch, Lauren. I mean, I think about that, and I think about on our day-to-day lives. I mean, if I need to know how to mount my TV up on the wall, I'm not going to go talk to my plumber. I'm going to go talk to the installation guy that puts the TVs on the wall all the time. Same way with you. You've experienced this, and now you're putting yourself out for other people to be able to have hope, faith, and know that maybe they went through the same thing that you did, and they're struggling, or whether they're going to rebuild or those things. And that's got to be a great experience for them to be able to hear your side of the story.
I appreciate that because I love hearing about how I can help other people, whether I know it or not. And I have gotten a chance to talk to a lot of people about that. It is my hope that in the future that I can continue to share, whether that be speaking or sharing the book more. But I just want to give people that hope. The other thing that I write about too is recognizing God's little miracles all throughout. So when I first crawled out from under the house, the first thing I could think about was that I needed some shoes because, we're barefoot. There's glass and nails everywhere. Crawling down there, it's a miracle that I did not step on something, first of all. But then I happened upon a pair of shoes, and this is one of my favorite stories to tell. It was one of my husband's golf cleats and one of his tennis shoes. So I slipped them on, 2 different shoes laying right there.
Wow.
I slipped them on and ran to him, and I asked him, the first thing was, what do you need? Which is, of course, a loaded question, but he looked at me and he said, shoes. So, well, here you go.
There you
I
go.
have that. And so I was able to give those shoes to him. And then I said, okay, I'm going to go find some more. Well, if you've seen pictures, which I have up on my website, it was just ridiculous. Things were everywhere. You were not going to find shoes. Well, I turned around and walked 5 feet and found shoes again. And they were my shoes. They were mismatched tennis shoes again. But I was able to put those on my feet.
Those little miracles, isn't it?
Just a second later, my husband came up to me after I found my shoes. And it had been raining and it was freezing. And I was so cold. And I told him, I'm so cold. And he picked up his rain jacket from the driveway.
Just happened to be there.
It was right there and put it on me and it was dry.
Yeah.
My husband, who did not have a shirt on his back, put a coat on my shoulders. And just right in the first 5 minutes, those 3 miracles, the little things that God provides for us.
Amen.
So it's not just these big, huge life-saving miracles, which obviously we survived and others were not so fortunate, but it is the little things that God uses throughout our life to set us up to do what we need to do and to accomplish his purpose.
Amen. We're talking with Dr. Lauren. This week's show, it's about hope. It's about recovery. It's about life continuing after the massive tornado we had back in 2020, this 4-year anniversary. I'm talking with Dr. Lauren Farmer. She wrote a book about it. Her and her husband, Kory, they were on Hensley Drive, the eye of the storm, lost their home and everything. Both of them survived, thankfully. And she wrote a book about her experiences and hopefully to help other folks. Lauren, we were talking about, tornado hit, I guess, early on that Tuesday morning. I think it was on Friday that the President of the United States came to visit. Was that a positive experience for you in the community there?
Yes, it was so positive. The way that he showed up had nothing to do with politics. It didn't have to do with anything of making a scene. It was purely to show support and to figure out how he could help us. The group of us got together that morning, and I remember he looked at my husband. He said, "Now you take care of her." As we're huddled in, we didn't have coats or anything.
Yeah.
I was wrapped in a blanket that morning.
Standing out in the middle of where the houses used to be there, right?
We were on my neighbor's lawn. I believe it is what it was. He's a veteran.
Yeah.
So that meant a lot to him as well.
It was, and we always said it was a turning point for us. We had been in search and rescue mode, trying to find all the people that were missing, because we had a long list of people that were missing. We didn't know if they were alive or not. We needed a breaking point to go from search and rescue to the recovery, and he hit it perfect. And I know I hear all the bad news stories, and the presidents a lot of time get a bad rap, but I thought you felt the same way I did. It was a very good experience, and he was very nice. He
had a really great human side to him, and you could tell that he cared.
Yeah, he
really did.
So you talked about initially that you blocked out a lot of this and what happened, and then but you thought that writing the book may help you as much as it helps other folks?
Absolutely. Writing the book, first and foremost, helped me to heal and helped me to really address some things that I had pushed back. You get to writing at night and I can go down just a wormhole and just, oh my goodness, I didn't remember this part or this part. And something that was a real big fear of mine was telling the story wrong. What if somebody picks up my book and they read it and they're like, that's not how that happened, or that's not how I remember it. And what I had to come to the conclusion of was that this is how I remember it. Right. This is how it's affected my life. And through my experiences, my own story, this is how I remember. And getting over the fear of putting myself out there to be judged and to be looked at. And it's okay if I don't remember it exactly right.
It's your memory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And my brain is going to protect me and show me things that in the way that it needs to protect itself.
How long did it take you to write the book?
I think from start to finish, it was about 4 months. But I was pregnant, exhausted, had a toddler or a 1-year-old at the time. I was working full time, had a side business, and then trying to fit all this in by the date that we had set for our deadline, my publisher and I. But the last 3 days I had taken off of work to really do the final push, and I wrote 27,000 words, which is
3 days,
almost half the book. Yes, in 3 days. And I could not have done it without God. They are not my words because I don't know 27,000 words.
That's amazing, isn't it? How I just think things like this are meant to be, and and for you to write this book is meant to be that it's a way that God puts you in a place to be able to get out and to help other people. You talk about your life now. You and Kory, happy, new home, jobs and everything, but now kids and everything, and you talk your life's actually better now than it was before.
Absolutely. We've learned so much, and we have the support of the community. We're involved in so many things now, and we've been able to really integrate ourselves and put roots down. Even if Cookeville isn't the long-term plan for us, it is the right here, the right now, and we love where we are. It's been, we built our first house and we designed everything, and then we got a clean slate and got to do it again. And that's been a lot of fun too.
So, folks, and I think we all do, we have problems with our face sometimes, don't we?
Absolutely.
We have weak moments. Things happen. We think, God, why is this happening to me or whatever? When you look back on everything's happened to you, and the way things have happened, that had to make your face stronger.
Yes. Initially, I don't know that I thought about it a whole lot. It was just purely survival mode, because a week after the storm, everything shut down. And so we're trying to order things on Amazon, and they're telling us COVID hit.
Boom.
They're telling us it's non-essential. I'm like, maybe it's non-essential for you, but I have nothing. How are you to tell me what's essential?
Yeah.
So going through all of that, in the moment, it wasn't something that was on the forefront. But as I wrote the book, I realized that throughout my life, there's a lot of points where I struggled with faith, and I wasn't raised in that culture. I wasn't immersed like I am now. So coming to that and kind of seeing how it led me to all these points now, it's been really helpful for me to strengthen my faith. If you just rely on God to provide, He will. He provided shelter for us 3 times. The night of the storm, somebody got a block of hotel rooms for our neighborhood. So we had a place to stay for a week. Then after that, somebody had provided a free Airbnb rental, which was such a blessing. And then after that, somebody came to us and we had a rental for a year with a fenced-in yard for our dogs while we rebuilt our house. Every step of the way. And I guess the 4th time was when we moved back into the house.
That's amazing.
Every step was provided by God if we just let Him.
So your book's on Amazon for the world to see.
Yes.
How's that experience been?
So it's been crazy. First of all, I hit #1 bestseller in women's spirituality.
Wow, that's great. Congratulations.
And thank you. And it was #1 new release as well when it came out. It's been awesome to get messages on Facebook and Amazon from people just saying how it's really affected them. But it's also hard because you have negative people who are always looking to say something negative. It doesn't matter what you say.
There's always going to be somebody negative anymore about something.
There is. So I really have tried to thicken my skin and let that just roll off my shoulder and not listen to that, because wherever you shine and wherever you meet the most or when you're about to have a big breakthrough is where you're going to meet the most resistance. So if the devil sees you doing something good, doing it for God, he is going to do everything in his power to stop you. And he's going to use people in your life to do that. Just like God is going to use people in your life to lift you up.
That's exactly right. What's next? So, you've got great job, great family and everything. Is there something that you still want to do that you haven't yet? Yeah,
I feel called to help people recover, to maybe do some motivational speaking. I don't know what that looks like yet, but I'm just trying to follow where God's leading me. And I just want to share my story as much as possible.
Well, you have been a blessing today, Lauren. I appreciate you being here and sharing your story and for taking the time and effort to write that book.
Thank you.
I look forward to reading it. I haven't got a chance yet, but I will, and I wish you the best. And let me say, we're glad you live in our community.
Thank you.
Talking with Dr. Lauren this morning. She has wrote a book, and it is available on Amazon. You can get it there. It's called After the Storm. It's a true story of tragedy, survival, and hope. Her and her husband survived the tornado back in 2020. You can also pick it up at one of our local bookstores, Plenty Downtown Bookshop, which is at 48 West Broad Street, or on Amazon. You can also check out Lauren at drlaurenfarmer.com. Well, that's our show for this week. Hope you'll join us every weekend for Today in Putnam County on all the Zimmer family of radio stations. I'm County Mayor Randy Porter. Hoping you have a great rest of your weekend, and may God continue to bless Putnam County.